Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe, and it's brought to you by Design Systems House. As usual, I'm your host, Donnie D'Amato, and today we're going to be talking about MDN's new front end. I saw this post by a friend of mine, Homer Gaines. He put this on Blue Sky real quick, and it was like, oh, okay, that could be something interesting to talk about today, so I figured we'd talk about it today. I don't have many updates because I had a whole bunch of updates yesterday all about things like Nathan Curtis being on the question, Clarity coming up, so lots of stuff going on in that episode, just all those kind of updates. But just today, we're going to be talking about MDN a little bit and diving into some of their front ends just a little bit, just to peruse around and see what it's all about, because I think it's going to be really interesting as a primary resource for front-end development for years. It's been a really long time, and I never even considered it being an open source kind of project that people can like jump into. I've seen a couple people like, claim that they were adding things to it, but I think today what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just kind of peruse around their front end and see what's going on. But first, let's talk to AI about it. Let's go ahead and give it a shot and see if this works out today. I love checking out and seeing what AI has to say about the topics we're going to be talking about today. So what do you think about MDN's documentation for front-end developers?
Oh, MDN's documentation for front-end developers is a fantastic resource. MDN, Mozilla Developer Network, provides a wealth of information and documentation on web development, particularly for front-end technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The documentation is well organized, easy to understand, and includes examples, tutorials, and best practices. It's widely used by web developers as a go-to resource for learning and troubleshooting front-end web development issues.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's obviously a good summary of what MDN's all about. Do you happen to know what tech stack they use to host the documentation?
As far as I know, MDN uses a combination of technologies to power their website and platform, including HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, as expected for a web development resource. They also use React, a popular JavaScript library, for building user interfaces. Additionally, they likely use a server-side technology like Node.js and a database like MongoDB to power their back-end functionality.
Okay, that sounds like maybe some assumptions about what they're doing. It doesn't sound like you know what they're actually doing. Is that right?
Yes, you are correct. To get in quantification. I made some assumptions based on common industry practices, but I do not have knowledge of the specific technologies and tools that MDN actually uses for their documentation platform.
Okay. No problem. We're going to go ahead and dive into some of the stuff that they have and some of the new stuff that they're promoting, in fact. So let's get into that right now. I'm going to bring up the computer and show my screen. Let's go ahead and pop over to the announcement that came out yesterday, launching MDN's new front end. And they have two images here. The image that's on top, actually, is this new Command K kind of look, which is a common practice for lots of websites, especially documentation ones, where you have this kind of command bar that gets launched for searching. So right now in MDN, you have this search bar over here, which is cute. Oh, wait, it's new. The new one's already here. Okay, super. Yeah, because what it used to be was, you just search up on the top, but now he just kind of pops out as a modal, which is cute. Actually, I kind of wonder if Command K actually works. Let's see. It's a Windows machine. Yes, it does. Super. All right, let me out. All right. Moving on down here, the the list of things that they're talking about here is they have improved typography for readability. That's very nice. They added a code font for consistent and high-quality code rendering across platforms. I wonder what this is. I don't know exactly what this means, because I'm assuming it's just a monospace font. But I wonder what the high-quality code rendering is, because apparently, you know, it's just a monospace font, right? But refreshed icons using the Lucide library. That's an icon library. Added a new search modal that lets you quickly find content anywhere in MDN. That's the one thing we just saw. And then they redesigned the top navigation to help you discover all the content in MDN has to offer readily, which, I mean, primary navigation stuff is always, you know, questionable. But we could kind of see here, not very easily because it won't expand, but up on top here it says preferences, I believe. Is that a P? Learn plus curriculum, which is new. Blog and I don't know what that last one is. But now we have HTML, CSS, JavaScript, web apps, all learn, tools, about, and blog. Right, so I'm going to assume that most of the stuff that was up here is probably now under about. Let's see what's in here. Yeah, okay, and then we got some tool stuff. Anything interesting in here? All right, learn. What about learn? All right, there's curriculum again. Yeah, what's all? Oh, so there's like extra stuff, all web technology, right? But the normal, the most common stuff is up here. All right, and then what happens if I look in CSS? Okay, they got some common stuff that's in here. That's cool. You could also see in the before and after, which I love when they have a before and after. You can really tell, excuse me, the changes. The general layout looks pretty much the same, right? You have the filters, you have the list of related, I guess in this particular case, HTML elements. Then we're talking about the page itself. So this is the bring attention to element, which it is not meant for bold, although it does bold stuff, but B is meant for bring attention to. And then you obviously also have the in-page navigation. You can see that they tighten it up a whole bunch over here, right? They've even tightened up the spacing. I mean, we could see that, you know, the space that was between the left nav and the content has also been nice and tightened over here as well, which is cool. A couple little styles for the code editor, which is nice. We could also even see, I mean, just from the change in style of the text and the amount of space, there's a lot more content above the fold, which is really nice too. I think that's all good stuff. But at the bottom here, they're talking about how you could be connected with them in Discord. They have a platform channel. And they also are letting people know that you can be a part of tracking issues with their GitHub repository. It's called Fred. And this triggered me, right? In design systems, there's a story about a component named Fred, made famous by Dan Mall, where the team that he was working with named their carousel Fred. So it's like, all right, is this related? And from what I can tell, it's actually not, because Fred stands for MDN's next front end, and the ONT and the N out of front end is in parentheses to highlight the FR, E, and D out of front end. So that's what Fred is coming from. It's coming from front end. I don't know how much I agree with that, but whatever. It's something fun to do, right? So this is the README out of Fred, and something to you know, something to pay attention to here. You got some normal commands of, you know, npm run start, npm run dev, build, preview, all that kind of stuff, right? And let's see here. So the interesting thing, I think, is that what we see in here is that we have custom elements, right? Custom elements are in here. So we can actually take a peek in here and see that there should be some custom elements in here. Let's find out what we have. So we have, let's look at something like the breadcrumbs. Not the bar, but the breadcrumbs. Let's see what they have here. So they have server-side stuff here. Okay, and they're using lit. Here it is. They're using lit. So they're using web components. That's definitely what's happening here. And they're using, yeah, so the server component. So they're using SSR out of lit, I'm assuming. That's what's probably going on here. And they have a server.index. So let's take a peek at that. because I'm not actually familiar enough with lit, admittedly, because I have been raw dogging web components for a really long time, and that's how I used to run it. Used to just, you know, do with the native stuff. But here's server. Oh, actually, hold on a second. I'm gonna look up here. I'm gonna go back to the server folder. Is that right? Actually, no. You got to go back up to. Maybe it's in components. Got to go up to components, and then there's maybe a server in here. Is that what's going on? Let's see. I forget how to read directory changes. There's server. Okay, let's take a look at server. And we have index. So this is probably some server-side stuff. Yeah, so server component here, HTML lit. I lost my, oh, there it goes. Lost my keyboard for a second. Okay, and it looks like they have styles for components. They have outer layout utils, so we're gonna take a look at that. And then async local storage, interesting. So they have a static render. And then they have render, it must be implemented by subclass, okay. So this is rendering HTML. We can see that here. It's also introducing the styles for this here, right? And there's a path, and how do they generate the path? Let's see. Where is the path? Path coming in from the top? Where's path? I very much might be blind. Because I see path here. Path comes in. Oh, I see. Okay, so for each styles, we take the path and then we generate HTML. Got it. Okay, got it. All right, and then there's apparently a script tag that is like set in there. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder what that ends up producing. But another thing that I looked in here when I was kind of preparing the show a little bit was I was looking in their package JSON to see if there was any particular kind of frameworks that I would have recognized. And admittedly, there wasn't a lot. When you look at their dependencies, you have CodeMirror. So CodeMirror is definitely being used for their code snippets and things like that. They have things for CSS, HTML, JavaScript. And then they have Lit Labs, so their SSR stuff, so that's where we're getting the SSR things from. And of course, CodeMirror in there. Concurrently, I've used before a long time ago to basically run scripts in parallel. Express is for servers, obviously. Lit and Lit HTML. The thing that I thought was interesting was Prism Svelte is in here. And there's also Prism.js. I guess I'm assuming the Prism stuff is for the non-code editable stuff that they see shown examples like later on the page. But I was curious about the Svelte thing. I wonder if there's actually any Svelte hanging around on MDN. I'm actually kind of curious about that. Moving down over here, here's the dev dependency. So more CodeMirror, a couple ESLint, some types, because there is TypeScript in here, CSS loader, you have, unfortunately, Webpack, again, more ESLint, PostCSS, some Sass, StyleInt. Yeah, so they will use Webpack in here, not so great, but you know what? For a better front end, I guess they're doing what they can. The other thing that I noticed that was in here was a whole bunch of references to this stuff called Rari and Yari. And they're by MDN. And I was like, what are these things? You know, because I'm like, well, what is it, you know, what else does this thing need to run? So I looked those up. So Rari in the MDN ecosystem apparently is a work in progress. But the expectation here is that Rari is the build system for MDN. And apparently it's based on Rust, which is pretty cool. I don't know enough about Rust, so there's no way of me, you know, sneaking around and trying to figure out what's going on in here. But apparently this is supposed to be a rewrite of Yari. And that's the other thing that I was looking at, which is over here, which is Yari. And Yari, I am assuming, based on that information before, is meant to be the build system that we currently is currently being used, because Rari is the next iteration of it. But Yari is using Git, Node.js, and Yarn. So you need those three things, obviously, for working with Yari. And yeah, it looks like it's just, you know, the way that they're building the MDN docs. I don't know how, if there's any like, I don't know where the content is. Is the content in here? Oh, I see. Okay, I have the content thing over here. But this actually, it's not the actual content. Is it docs? Let's see what docs is in here. This looks like docs for Yari maybe. So is the docs for MDN in Fred? I don't know where the docs are. Build submit your content components. No, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where the docs end up being, because it doesn't look like these are docs that would be shown on the site, right? This is just a part of, again, documenting what Yari's all about doing. Let's see if there's anything inside of the package JSON that could give us any information. Ooh, there's Jess in here. All right, so, oh my God, look at all the scripts. So we got code mirroring here as well. Interesting. So I guess there's, all right. So I think what's going on in here is because of all these dependencies that look similar to the ones that we saw in Fred. What I think is probably happening is they used to use Yari as their kind of mono project, and I think Fred and Rari are now splitting the Yari project. Right, because we're seeing, again, code mirror stuff in here. We're seeing Mozilla Glean, which was another thing that was in Fred. We're seeing, things like that are inside of this project. So my assumption is that this is just the older, Yari's the older project, and they just made 2 new repos to kind of split everything up. I think that's what's going on in here. But you know what? Back to the new implementation of this stuff. I think this looks good. I mean, there's not a lot of big change here, and I think that's important when it comes to, doing a UI refresh. Is that you don't want to, scare people too much about, big changes. Well, we've seen lots of big changes when it comes to, things like apps like Facebook. When Facebook did a whole bunch of different big changes, we had a whole big, hoopla about, oh, they moved everything. I don't know where anything is, etc. So when you make UI changes like this, which are subtle or add new features, or even just make a slight adjustment to the UX of an existing feature, and when I say that, I'm specifically talking about the search functionality, right? Because with that search functionality, what you used to be able to do is you would type into the box, and then when you hit search, it would give you the results page. Now, what it looks like it's doing is it's actually just giving you the results there in a modal. Which is interesting. I mean, it depends, I guess, a little bit about like your preference about information over the wire. Because I think there's something about excuse me, one second. Oh goodness. There's something about like your browser loading a page, right? Or the page having like an AJAX or a fetch request that's behind the scenes that you don't know what's happening, right? Because when your browser is loading a page, the browser itself has cues that show you when, the loading is happening, like something is actually happening, whether there's a spinner on there or a bar that's kind of like increasing as it goes along. There's like UI cues that are saying, hey, like maybe the network's not so great, etc. But if you do it through a asynchronous request, like the way that I think they're doing it now, you as the application need to now give cues about progress and loading, right? So I think it's interesting when a particular application wants to go ahead and take on that responsibility and provide some interesting feedback. But ultimately, I actually, from a user experience standpoint and from a maintainability standpoint, I'd probably prefer just letting the browser provide the feedback about your connection, right? But I'm sure that there's other options in there in terms of like, okay, or other ways of thinking about the AJAX request and making sure that it, provides the right, information. But, letting the browser do the work, I think that always ends up being the better idea personally. Again, I don't want to, if I can focus my time on other user experience things that really need to be focused on, I'd much rather do that than fiddle with some of the bells and whistles. But that's just me, right? Or maybe it's not just me. Maybe it's other user experience professionals out there that also would rather, defer this to things like the browser and et cetera. I think that's just the right play. But let me know what you think about the new MDN docs and, maybe the search functionality or some of the tightening of the space up there. If you could find where they changed the code font and why they did that in particular, I can't tell from the docs and the announcement, but maybe you can. But leave it in the comments down below. Play nice in there, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.